Fast Forward Productions. The women are speaking.
The easiest way to destroy a place would be to destroy their water, the abuse of water. It really takes you to like the dawn of time, and then the current world we're in with water, and then the future and all the awesome possibilities there are to correct our wrongs, to think about it differently, to realize we cannot live without it.
You're listening to the Good Dirt Podcast. This is a place where we dig into the nitty-gritty of sustainable living through food, fashion, and lifestyle.
And we're your hosts, Mary and Emma Kingsley, the mother and daughter founder team of Lady Farmer. We're sowing seeds of slow living through our community platform, events, and online marketplace.
We started this podcast as a means to share the wealth of information and quality conversations that we're having in our world as we dream up and deliver ways for each of us to live into the new paradigm, one that is regenerative, balanced, and whole.
We want to put the microphone in front of the voices that need to be heard the most right now, the farmers, the dreamers, the designers, and the doers.
So come cultivate a better world with us. We're so glad you're here. Now, let's dig in.
So, Mom, we have a super special episode today. I'm really excited about this one. This is the return of the very first guest 001 of the Good Dirt Podcast.
Yes, ground zero of our little show here. I remember when we were setting up for our new show, I was in the attic of the barn. Do you remember? You had me up there.
Yeah, we were so worried we felt like we had to build a sound booth.
Yeah, I remember when we signed on for the first interview, I was like under all these covers and stuff. It was very funny.
Yeah.
We ended up having to do over again because the internet connection out in the barn was not good enough to conduct the interviews.
You know what's so funny about this? Even today, even just setting up to record this intro today, it's a technical adventure every single time.
It's true. 4.5 years later, we're still going like, well, why did it do that?
Little moment of reality here. Maybe we should figure that out. But it's okay. We're here. It seems like we're recording so far.
Just so we had to work with it. But it's like it's working now.
Yeah. Today's guest, Amy, she's also a dear friend of ours. And there's a reason why she was ground zero guest. She just sort of embodies all that we talk about and want to be here at the Good Dirt Podcast. And you'll see why in this episode. I remember first connecting with her years ago when we were really early in the Lady Farmer project. We've been collaborators and I consider us colleagues and friends ever since. She's a really special person in this space. If you are interested in sustainable textiles, if you're interested in slow fashion, sustainability, natural dye, and now, as you'll hear in this episode, water quality, she's someone that you want to know and you want to follow her work. So we're really excited to have her back.
Amy has worked as a sustainable textile industry writer for the past 15 years. She loves getting people to think about where things come from. She recently stepped down from her position at Botanical Colors, where she created Feedback Friday, which was a free series that started during COVID with 134 episodes, when over 12,000 having tuned in over those 3 years that it ran. You can still access the archives on the Botanical Colors site.
And Mom, didn't you tune in to several of those?
Yes. It is an amazing amount of information on there. So for anyone interested in natural dyeing, you should check it out. So Amy was behind all of that.
She's also consulted on communications and sustainable strategies. And she's created and moderated events for the RISD Nature Lab, the Stone Barn Center, and Fibershed, Elizabeth Klein, Buffy Bedding, and many more organizations, educational institutions, and media outlets that you can think of. Today, you can find her co-running the Southwestern New England Fibershed, learning how to keep carbon in the ground, how to grow dye plants in wastewater, as you'll hear today, and how to create a digestible dialogue with farmers about climate change, creating a regional supply chain that supports Massachusetts and Rhode Island textile businesses.
So you'll hear all about what she's up to now in today's episode. It's super interesting discussion. Really excited to be talking about water on the show. You know, for as much as we talk about good dirt, we haven't talked that much about water quality. And this is really interesting to me personally. I learned a lot, and I've been thinking about it a lot ever since we talked to her. So Amy's just a fantastic connector. She's described as an international switchboard operator connecting good people. And in our opinion, good dirt. So listen in. Here's Amy DuFault.
So I think a good place to start, because you were our first interview, Amy. So that's another thing that's just fun.
I feel like I'm everybody's guinea pig. I was the first one on Kestrel Jenkins' Conscious Chatter as well.
Cool.
No, her mother was the first one. That was the first interview on Conscious Chatter.
You were the first non-mom interview.
People are like, I feel comfortable with Amy. If I mess up, she won't be mad.
Conscious Chatter. What? No, I want to tune into that. That sounds really
I've
interesting.
listened to her. We should have her on.
Yeah, have
That's a great
Kestrel
idea.
on.
So let's start with,
How about we start with this? You ready?
yeah.
Wherever you go, there you are.
Hey.
I love it. It's so true. I got to move to a farm, or I got to leave the country. Guess what?
I got
You're
to
right
do all
where
these
you
things
are.
for everybody else and all these different venues and industries. I got to do all these things. And then all of a sudden you're like,
Yeah.
oh man, I feel really tired. I don't have a creativity left anymore. Oh my God. Wherever you go,
Yeah.
there you are.
Yeah.
That's good.
There you are. And you're right there with your same self that you were with in those other circumstances.
And hopefully you're
really
evolving.
profound.
You're evolving in through those different circumstances.
Yeah. Well, you are, because you seek other things. You think, if I go do this job, or, then it's going to be different. And then you learn
then it's
again.
not
You
different.
learn again. It's like
And you
that
just figure out
spiral.
that you're the problem.
Yeah. If you're not part of the problem, then there is no solution.
Oh,
And you guys just be with that a while, and you will realize that there was never anything with more truth in it than
Whoa.
that.
have you, Mary?
Yeah. Well, the whole there you.
That was the
Wherever
time
you
that
go, there
Mary
you are.
said that quote and it sent me off.
So I think we should start with how we initially first got connected. And I think that tells a good story about where you were when that happened. And then a couple years later, you were the first episode on our podcast. Now you're here. And then just kind of maybe, I think we can start in that transition space, right? Okay.
You lead the way on this and I'll fill in the blanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, Amy, I'm so happy to be talking to you right now. I'm so sorry I made you do annoying things on your computer, but it was worth it. This interview is going to be awesome. And it's because talking to you is always awesome, because you're one of my favorite people. And I've been so lucky. We've both been so lucky to be able to work with you in a professional capacity over the years, and also call you a friend.
Thank you for
Okay.
having me on. Well, my name is Amy DuFault. I live in this beautiful place called Cape Cod, and I am currently communications director at the Massachusetts Alternative Septic System Test Site. And I also am the director of the Southwestern New England Fibershed, which I've been running for 7 years, connecting farmers all the way through to finished product. And that product could be soil, it could be a shirt, it could be a pair of pants, it could be insulation. But I help connect the dots in this region. That's southeastern Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And I also do consulting on the side. So I consult for fiber and textile companies. And what I do is I take everything I know from being in sustainable fashion and textiles for the past 17 years. And I just put a new subject in, because that's all it is all the time. It's, oh, this was a problem. This is a problem in the fashion industry. Well, it's the same issue in the water industry. And it's the same issue in the gardening industry, the building industry. There's kind of these common themes that I'm finding. And so no matter who I talk with now, who I'm consulting for or working for, I'm able to look at this bigger piece of the puzzle and why people are having problems understanding how to move forward within an industry, and give them the proper tools for communication so that they can move forward. That's kind of just become my thing more than anything, is helping people develop languages to move forward.
So you say, first of all, I want to say a couple of things. I love how one of the first things you said when you were talking about what Fibershed does is to help get to the end product. And the end product you mentioned was soil. I don't think I was like, oh yeah. And just having the idea of an end product being the soil and that's the first thing you say, is really cool. Because we're a part of the Fibershed in this area too. And Fibershed in general, I think people think of the main focus is around textiles and clothing. But of course, it's all connected back to soil. So thank you for saying that. And then I love what you were saying about doesn't matter what industry or who exactly you're talking to, the problem's the same. So what are we talking about? What's the problem?
Well, it's funny. I was just on a Zoom call before this. I was talking with these people who work in the world of wastewater and urine diversion. We were just having this conversation, and a lot of people on there where they were just bringing up these facts that are just paralyzing, how awful they are about how much fertilizer we use in the United States annually and how much that fertilizer is poisoning our groundwater. These facts were coming out over and over, and everybody's saying, did you know this? Did you know that? Did you know this? I can't believe people don't know about it. I said, well, I'm going to step into this as a person who's been working in the fashion and textile industry and who is here to say that it doesn't work in the fashion textile industry to also spew out these facts and get people feeling powerless, that they have no ability to improve upon what's been put before them. I think it is very paralyzing. So we have to find ways to get people to be part of a conversation. And to get them to be part of a conversation is to find that common language, to make them feel at ease, to also understand that there's people out there that know tons of things that you don't, and vice versa. That's kind of where I start a lot of these conversations. But it was interesting. So I said, why don't we create some really strong graphics and then relate it to plates? Same thing in the fashion industry and the textile industry. You can't keep talking about how we're losing farms and how many acres a minute we're losing farms and how much the industry is going downhill since NAFTA. And you can keep saying all this stuff all you want, but it doesn't make anything better. So where we were joking around at the beginning, we were saying, wherever you go, there you are. You have to start thinking about, there's a common theme here. Okay, the common theme is me. And the common theme is I'm really interested in these things and I want to make them better. I want to make my ponds and lakes and ocean better. I want to make it so that I know who makes my clothes. I want where my clothing, from the color for my clothing, where it comes from. So, as you want to do good, you're the common theme. So you have to start thinking that, no, how do I find out about that? How do I make a difference in how the color gets on my clothing? So that's when you start creating this sort of, I guess, a personal toolkit. It's a personal toolkit that is how you're able to move forward and to navigate that area that you're really feeling dedicated and passionate about and that you want to create the language for. And so once you feel comfortable creating that language with you, then you can start sharing it out with others, coming at it from this place that's not all gloom and doom. It's actually really optimistic, actually, that we have these opportunities to make change.
Thank you for that. The personal toolkit. I want to talk about that idea for anyone listening that might be fairly new to these things. They might be just learning. I mean, we've been steeped in this for years, but I don't think it's super mainstream yet. If it were mainstream, then things would be different. So someone who maybe they have an inkling of this, maybe they're hearing some of it for the first time, thinking about the impact of their personal consumer choices, of their clothing, of the color of their clothes, the fabrics, where do they start with that?
Their personal toolkit?
Yeah.
Ooh, I think the personal toolkit is even deeper, even a couple chapters before asking that question, because it's look at what you're doing in the world and how, if you're going to focus on clothing, okay, I'm working a lot on a farm, I'm working more at home, where I'm not in an office. I'm not out there that I need to be changing my clothes all the time. Actually, if you're working in an office too, there's no need to be changing your clothes all the time. But it's sort of like just looking at the lay of the land, I think, where you are in relation to your clothing and your clothing needs and how to evolve your clothing, how to currently just change the color of something with natural dyes, which is something that I do all the time, or how to edit your clothing, working with a tailor, or if you know how to sew, to be able to edit your clothes. But a lot of this comes down to the sort of the why, the why of, why are you doing what you're doing? Why do you need these clothes to make you feel comfortable and to have you ready for that job? And then also, Why do you need so many of the clothes? Why is everybody pushing you to think you need so many clothes to do what you do? And also empowering you then with this ability that you can transform your clothes, you can edit your clothes. I guess it first starts, I know now we're talking about this personal toolkit, like we've talked about it for an hour. And this is really the first time we're talking about
Amy,
it.
tell us about the book you just wrote about personal toolkit.
We're just coming up with this.
We're workshopping it.
Yeah. But when I'm referring to the personal toolkit, it's like, okay, if we are focusing on clothes, then asking these questions of why I want things, why do I need things, and how to move forward with them. Like you're saying, Mary, how do you start forward once you know now? Now you want to make great choices. You want to know the people and the places, the people who have made your clothing. I mean, there is so much information online. You can just Google at this point. I remember 17 years ago when we first started, there was a gang of us who were just taking on the work that people had already been doing in the 60s and the 70s. This is nothing new that we're doing, but the internet wasn't around at that time. So now we have the internet, and there's so much information about how to find the most ecologically friendly pair of jeans, how to find the cleanest fiber, cotton versus hemp. You can just start looking for things online. That's out there now.
And that kind of relates to also the value. This might be what you're saying, just in different words. We talk a lot actually on here about like a value system, like deciding for yourself. Because if you just say, I'm going to do the best I can, the most sustainable, like even the best you can, there's a wide array of what that means. And so we learned this pretty early on, the clothes, making the Lady Farmer Essential Collection line. We had all these boxes we wanted to check, and we literally couldn't. Like, you just can't check them all. So you kind of have to prioritize those boxes. And how do you prioritize those boxes? Well, to your point, like a couple chapters back, what are your values and like, what are you going for? So I think this plays into that too. Even the most ecologically sound pair of jeans, well, is that regarding, are you worried about the fiber? Are you worried about the labor? Are you worried about the dye? All of the different parts of it. I think it's like A, educating yourself, to your point, Amy, and B, determining your value system, and then C, coming up with a system of how to apply that value system into your decision making. And it's a lot of work, but it's worth it.
Maybe you're going to make a decision that requires a little more money, maybe, or less convenience, or a change in habit. Just decide that it's okay to change what you're doing and what your friends are doing, and just be willing to be outside of the mold or the system of behaviors that we've adopted, because it's become more and more clear every year that we do this podcast, talk to more people that, that's not working, and we need a massive shift. So, and it's going to take individuals just deciding to make that shift, whatever the cost of convenience or routine or habit, all those sorts of things. So, Amy, you've had a really interesting career, and this thread of consciousness and textiles and seeking a new way forward has been consistent throughout. So I would like to hear about your career journey, where you started out with this and how and why, and how you ended up here at the, what's it called?
Massachusetts Alternative Septic System Center, soon to be Tech Center, because we do a lot of work with technology around tools that clean up water. That's what we're there for. We're there to work with people as a third-party certifier to make sure that the technologies they're creating are really working as efficiently as they say to help clean up water.
So to where you ended up today working with the Mass TC.
Well, I guess throughout my entire career, I have come at things where if I see a problem, I want to solve it. And I think that's something I've done since I was a kid. When I got into the sustainable fashion industry over 17 years ago, I was working at a trade show in Las Vegas, and a friend of mine had asked me to rep for a designer, so help sell the designer's clothing to boutiques. And I had a woman come up and everybody was walking. By that time, we had little leaves that signified that you were a green or an eco brand, eco showroom. So people were terrified when they saw the little leaf. It was like, yikes, get past that one. But I said, why are people so afraid of doing good for people and planet? So I remember this woman, she was walking slowly by and she gave me the side eye. And I said, get over here. So she comes over and I said, what do you do? What are you seeing that looks exciting about, the clothing here? And so anyway, she starts telling me what she liked about it. And then she said, but I don't like all this eco crap. I don't understand it. And I said, aren't you a woman in business? You're an entrepreneur, right? Like, yeah, of course. And I have a boutique. And I said, well, the two women that run this brand that I was standing in front of, are also women in business. They're trying to run this successful business, making clothes that are better for people and better for the planet. And so why would you be afraid of them? They're just like you. And she was like, didn't think about it like that. It just says they're just doing something that they feel is right. She was like, oh, okay. And we ended up having a good time. And it was my first order of the weekend. I got a nice order from the boutique for that designer. And I was really excited. And I came away, I remember going home on the plane and thinking, oh, people are afraid of people doing good for people and planet. I've been writing for years already as a journalist and really getting into green design with building materials. And I had editors saying, maybe you could not do as many stories like that. And I was like, but it's really interesting, this green building stuff. And then I was like, it's really interesting, this whole idea around eco fashion or sustainable fashion, whatever everybody was calling it at that time. I came at it as a person who wanted to solve a problem with the communication around how we talked about those brands and how designers could talk out. What could they do to engage people more? And that was something that really has taken center since the beginning with fashion. And then as I got more into it, I was the person pigeonholed for anything that was around production or human rights issues. So, because that's what it came down to for me as I evolved in that world. Okay, great. You can make beautiful clothes with beautiful fibers, but wait a minute, like you were saying, Emma, there's this umbrella of sustainability. It's got certified cotton, but it's made really cheaply in a factory that's not paying their people livable wages. For every single thing, every single equation, I guess I would come in, I'd see the complexity of it. There was always something that was off balance. If people weren't being paid fairly, starting with a farmer, if a farmer wasn't being paid fairly, growing the cotton or the hemp or has the sheep or the alpaca, isn't it sort of off balance from the start? And then as I evolved more into Fibershed and started this Fibershed, I started thinking more with the help, of course, of the main Fibershed in California. It's even before that, it's the soil. If the soil is not healthy, if the soil is not filled with awesome microbes and it's not thriving and living, then it's really just dirt and not good dirt. There's a difference between dirt and soil. And as that has evolved, I started working in the world of natural dyes and for Botanical Colors. And I worked Botanical Colors for 11 years. And really thinking about where our color comes from. And over the years, working more with farmers in the US, trying to understand what were the challenges to being a natural dye farmer in the US and why couldn't we have that in the US? And why was it still in other countries that a lot of these dyes were being made and sourced from, even though they're great, got certified or they have women's cooperatives where people are being paid fairly. I just thought it's another challenge. Why can't we do this? The more I worked with farmers and the more I understood a lot of the things around like fertilizing, water, recirculating the water and reusing the water, it led me then into the place that I am now. But there's a whole other personal story, of course, that pushed me even further into this, but really starting to think about the most elemental piece of it all, which is where the water comes from to grow the plants that make the fiber that are made into clothing or animals fed that keep pastures healthy. So the water, it's come down where I thought dirt would be the most elemental. Now I'm at water.
Have you ever seen the movie The Big Short?
I have not.
It's about the 2008 crash with the housing market. It's a great movie and it explains it really well. And it is entertaining. It's not too depressing, except it's about this guy who kind of predicted the whole crash and understood the economics of it. At the end, they sort of do this addendum scene where it's like we're seeing the same stuff play out with the housing market and the guy's predicting this whole thing. And then it goes to like, but this time it's water. And it's like, oh, and that movie was made probably 6 or 7 years ago about the crash that was almost 20 years ago now. It is baffling, like how much we take it for granted and don't know about it. And we just sort of turn on, especially in this country, turn on the tap and you can drink it.
I'm reading this really good book called The 3 Ages of Water by Peter Gleich. And it really gives you this past perspective on thinking about water, how we first used it for agriculture, how we started damming it for the first time, the wars that were fought over it. The easiest way to destroy a place would be to destroy their water, the abuse of water. It really takes you to like the past age, which is the dawn of time. Kind of looking at water and looking at history through that. And then the current world we're in with water. And then the third part being the future and all the awesome possibilities there are to correct our wrongs, to think about it differently, to realize we cannot live without it. But all the things, like, there's different ways that we are abusing it in ways that we don't even realize. I mean, not everybody's to blame. Everybody is to blame, but not everybody knows why they're doing things the wrong way. And that's, again, where the communications comes in, where you have to engage people in some way so that they get a connection to water, because we flush our toilet and water goes down the drain. Turn our faucet on and we get a glass of water. We take these things for granted here in the United States. And in most parts of the world, it is not that easy to access water. I mean, I don't know what the statistic is, but it's something crazy for the United States. Like, I want to say like 30% of the US doesn't even have clean sanitation in the United States.
That's crazy.
It is an alarming amount of people in the United States that don't even have access, that have just holes in the ground in their backyard, if that. I mean, I'm learning so much about water and gobbling it up, all this information. When I go into these meetings with all these people who have been doing this their whole lives, that's what they went to school for. I just say, it's good for you that I'm here, because I am a kindergartner learning everything and I'm taking it in. But I'm also the person you to want to know more about what you have to say. So I can tell you that's not going to work. I get why people aren't listening to you.
I don't know if you said this in this conversation or if we had talked about this earlier, but you're starting with this. You're in your hometown where you grew up and where you currently live, and you're like, I'm going to do water stuff here. You've been all around the country and the world, and you're back here. And I think that's really beautiful.
I want to hear about what you do with Mass TC and what you're learning.
A lot of it takes place here at this table, where I'm on meetings and talking with people. It could be press people. It could be an event. I'm running an event right now over the course of this year with over 10 libraries on Cape Cod. So I've got a tour called the Waste No Water Library Tour. We're on tour right now. I go in on Wednesdays and I meet with the team, and it's really been great to have a physical team there. For so many years, I've just worked online. I like to sit in a room physically with people and share in this thing that we do together that we're all passionate about. But I also totally grow natural dye plants there, and I have for 3 years. So the first year, I was actually on their podcast being interviewed and had no idea where I was. They just wanted me to talk about water in the fashion industry. So I did that. And then got a tour of the space, and I was like, wow, this is pretty crazy here. And my friend Brian, who's a project manager there, just said, we should grow some of those dye plants out here. So we started using wastewater, and they have all these test beds that these companies can come in. So they had some people weren't using. So we planted all kinds of stuff like indigo and Navajo tea, and we planted amaranth and Hopi sunflowers, calendula. I've actually got a whole spreadsheet of all the flowers that we've grown there, but also all the wildflowers that are growing there. I've got everything organized. And then through a Fibershed grant, I actually grew coreopsis and pincushion flowers in these barrels, and we fertilized half of them to see the impacts of urine on the plants.
Straight urine, not even diluted or anything?
No, it was diluted. It was a gallon of urine.
Okay.
With 5 gallons of water. And we just wanted to see like them. And so I had somebody who was working with us from NOFA, Massachusetts Northeast Organic Farming Association. So we had a soil expert helping us. And then Brian was there to help with the water part. And we have lots of information and data on what the results were all the way down to the very end when we pulled the root system up or weighed them to see, did the urine fertilized plants grow? Does it have more of a root mass than the other? So I have lots of information on that. If you guys, we could always share it out after. This year, I am working part-time at Mass TC, and I left Botanical Colors after 11 years, starting March 1st. And so I've been just kind of getting my footing or getting my legs there, trying to figure things out. But we're going to be growing a whole bunch of Hopi sunflowers all around the perimeter and using urine as the fertilizer for it. And I'm creating a pollinator hill, and we have water features with flowers growing. So what I realized there is I can pull in my world of natural dyes and talk when people start looking at the beautiful flowers and wondering how they grow. I can say, hey, yeah, they grow awesome like this, right? They grow beautifully here, but they're growing in wastewater and urine. And that's great for here. But when it's in a pond or a lake or an ocean and you get invasive seaweed and you get this disgusting green slime that shuts down a pond or shuts down a lake from fishing, swimming, even the stuff gets in the air, it's dangerous, then you have a problem that's not good. So my way I've started connecting with people there was through flowers and natural dyes. And so I always make sure I'm wearing something that's naturally dyed with flowers I grew there too, because then I can show that. And then everybody understands clothing, right? Because we all wear it. So I start helping them to put it all together with sustainable fashion, sustainable color, and water. It's probably one of the strangest, most difficult jobs I've ever had in my life, but it's strangely working really well.
That's so cool.
The language of
Yeah.
flowers. So tell me more about the connection between learning whether or not the wastewater fertilizes these plants. Is there an application that you're exploring there? The way to use the wastewater so that it's diverted from the waterways where it's doing harm?
I would say the most important group that you could follow right now that has all of this information, that has extensive research, they have lists of projects all over the US, is the Rich Earth Institute in Brattleboro, Vermont. That's who I was just on the call with earlier. And it's just exciting because they have so much information on there. Just again, research. They sell a thing called a QB that's on there if you want to really take it to another level, which I have. I drank the Kool-Aid. I'm doing it. I'm actually, we're actually in this household peeing into a QB. We do not pee into a toilet anymore to make the water back. Because if you pull out the urine, you really don't have wastewater. It's like most of the reasons why we have wastewater is because of urine. So we instead divert it. And it's my husband's dream because basically there's suddenly a urinal in the bathroom. Another one of those challenges I'm seeing are women in this industry and how things are being designed for them, because it's not an easy thing for a woman to use. But we use that, and you can actually apply it to your own yard. But it's out there is going to say, wait a minute, what? But it's interesting if you think about it. People who don't understand what it's like to have septic systems in their backyard and that you're running a wastewater treatment plant in your backyard, which none of us ever applied for, ever wanted this job. But here on Cape Cod, we have Title V septics. We have cesspools. That's what the Cape Cod was first built with, cesspools, which is just a hole in the ground. And as it went into the hole in the ground, it went through into the soil. And it was okay when there weren't as many people as there are here now. Now we have people who still have cesspools because you can grandfather these things in and not have to deal with it. But we have Title V's, which have a collection tank. And then it goes out into the backyard, out into your soil in your backyard. And that's most of the Cape. That's how it is with cesspools or septic systems. There's a very people here where there's an actual wastewater treatment plant and sewering where it's just pipes and it goes someplace. But what happens is that the wastewater, whatever's in it, like think about all your pharmaceuticals, think about all the bad things that are in the environment. It's all working its way down through the soil and then down into this little river you don't see, this groundwater flow that's underneath all of us. We have really good drinking water here. But the ponds that run off, the ponds, lakes, and oceans are suffering because it's all going down into it. And there's a whole other thing that I'm just starting to understand too called saltwater intrusion. So the more that we shrink the amount of groundwater that we have, the more we have this salt water trying to force its way into our drinking water. So we have to be careful of that. So we don't have salty drinking water. Nice to meet you, freshwater. Yeah, we could do some damage together. But yeah, so I'm hoping I'm answering your question, Mary.
Yes. And I'm hearing this for the first time. And my next question is, okay, so you divert the urine in your own household, and then you said you can apply it in your backyard. But then the question that immediately comes to mind there is, then doesn't that affect the groundwater? And then with the septic systems, secondly, we have a septic. My understanding, and this is good for me to discover if I've not been understanding this correctly all this time. I don't know, but it's channeled down and out away from the house, but eventually it's released out there. And supposedly the microbes and so forth in the soil take care of it. I'm using air quotes, but is that just wishful thinking?
When you think about why would it be okay to put urine on the top of the soil versus all the way down in the soil, I want you to think about that groundwater river that's down there with your septic. The closer you get down to that groundwater, you're getting closer to getting all that bad stuff closer to it. When you have something like diluted urine that you put on your yard, or farmers in Vermont are using on their pastures to grow grass, There are quite a few farmers in Vermont, because it's legal in Vermont to do this, that are actually using it on their crops. But when you put it on the soil here, in my yard, I don't put fertilizers on except for some flowers, and I'll get fish poop and dilute that and use fish poop. I have pretty beautiful amount of clover that's growing. I have soil in my yard. I've been working at it for years. So that urine is going to go on top of all this good stuff. It's really good if you have piles of leaves too, compost piles. You're just basically putting it through a filtration system. So you're filtering it through the soil, through the root systems of plants, through trees. You've got this diverse system that's happening in your yard. So it's taking care of all the things in the urine that you maybe don't want to have going down. So that's an answer to your first question. It's better to have it a lot higher above your groundwater than it is really close to your groundwater. And then I guess the system itself, where we've had these Title V, this is so not a sexy conversation, but it's important. All the heavy stuff goes down to the bottom, and then you have the stuff that's on the top. And anything that's the liquid is filtering out into your leach field, which is just your yard. Your soil is just leaching out into the soil. So when you call the guy to say, hey, I need my septic pumped, he's going to get all that stuff out of there, and which do your due diligence, anyone listening to this, and please make an appointment to get your septic pumped. So you're taking care of it so that you're pulling a lot of that away from the groundwater. But what we do at Mass TC is we add a whole extra layer into that. So an innovative alternative system is, if you imagine it, so you've got this first piece that we know what it looks like. Got, again, that concrete thing that we have that's got the holes in it on the sides. Now there's a tube that comes out. There's lots of different types of systems. But imagine it, there's another little block that's attached to it. It's kind of like a Lincoln Logs or something, and that is treating the water even more. Different systems do different things. I know one of the systems that the guys at Mass TC say works best is actually just wood chips. It's a big concrete block. And it has tons, it's like, I don't even know, like 6 feet deep of wood chips. So as your water out of that Title V, it would go into the wood chips, and all the microbes that start building up in the wood chips is actually totally cleaning it and doing more. Like, wood chips are using nature to clean up this mess we've created. It's actually really interesting to see how we can use these simple ways so that when it gets into that leach field, it's a whole heck of a lot cleaner. We just started this thing. So I was telling you about this Waste No Water library tour. So we've taken this show on the road. So all these libraries all over Cape Cod are hosting us. We show this documentary that we were just featured in, a Scientific American documentary. It's 10 minutes. But it shows this place that we live in. It shows Cape Cod. When you watch this as a Cape Codder, you're like, oh, I know where that is. And then you start seeing the headlines. Like, we've been in the New York Times. We've been in the Boston Globe. That Scientific American did a 2-part series with a documentary on this problem we have here is massive. We have a massive problem here. We can't live unless tourists come here. We have to think of ways so that we can all live here. So the library tour is inviting everyone from water enthusiasts to public officials, real estate agents, landscapers, people interested in urine diversion. There's pond groups, so many pond groups on Cape Cod. So the pond groups have been super active with us. But I'm trying to get people to come to these that have never been part of this conversation before. And so we start out with a documentary, which is pretty dismal. And then we go into a 6-slide presentation, and it's all pictures. Let's take all the text out. Let's let people visualize what this looks like. And then we open it up to questions. If you're going to wait 20 years to get sewering coming up to your house, you want to protect the pond you live on, what are your options? So we talk about urine diverting toilets, and composting toilets, and these IA systems and all the technology that's out there. And there are 4,000 of these systems on Cape Cod right now. So it's letting people understand that, it could be a neighbor. You don't see it, but it could be something that's just right next door and it's helping you. But it's been really interesting. We're heading over to the vineyard this month and out to Wellfleet, and we have some big crowds out there that are in both places. Lots of people have lots of questions. So they're saying you should come to this event because we're coming at it in a place that it doesn't make you feel defensive, because every single piece of the puzzle is needed here. Every single piece. We're not against sewering. We're for all the different pieces of the puzzle. That's this wastewater mess that we're in here on Cape Cod. Anyways, yeah, it's been great. And then we go and talk to a lot of pond groups around here too. And we do tours at Mass TC too. So we have some real estate agents that I got in touch with. There's 4,500 on Cape Cod. So now they're talking about it because they have an ethical obligation when they talk about the house that they're selling or somebody who's buying a house and they're on a pond. They're going to find out soon enough that that pond is not in good health. They've got to have answers for people. How is this going to be fixed if I bought this house? It could come down to money too. It gets people motivated. But whatever it is, I don't care. I'm just reining them in.
Well, I'm curious if there are alternative systems that will help, and if we can get property owners invested in this. Is there local governmental support or subsidy for them utilizing these alternatives? Like in our county, you can get some really great tax credits if you convert to solar, that kind of thing. There's also a discussion going on out here in our ag reserve about how to provide facilities because there are more and more tourists out here too, because agritourism is a big thing. People come out to the breweries and the wineries, and sometimes there's big crowds out here in the weekends from cities. So that this it's a discussion. What are these facilities, these places supposed to do about that? Their septic fields can't handle it. But there's, at least so far, the county has not gotten behind a lot of the composting. They've got a couple of demonstration sites, but that's the stage that it's in. So does the government, since it's a more current issue on Cape Cod and it's more urgent because that's a small piece of land and tons of tourists and residents, and you can see how that would be a situation. Is the government supporting people in making this transition?
So just for you guys or for anybody who is interested in knowing more about your options, the first place that you'd probably want to start with would be your Board of Health. So wherever, your city, your town. So we tell people, whatever town you live in here on the Cape, you would health, and you would start talking to whoever that is about how you could move forward. And they are going to slowly be more educated about those options. There's also an entire workforce that needs to be created around this because of the plumber. Plumbing is different. So plumbers, it's a whole new world of educating plumbers on how these new appliances work. All this is being worked on at once. But here on the Cape, my job is through the county, Barnstable County. Barnstable County has a group or an arm that's called the Aqua Fund. And the Aqua Fund has money that has come in from the state. I have to actually learn a lot more about the Aqua Fund. I just started learning more about them actually at our last Waste No Water library tour. I can't believe I don't know everything about them right now because of how awesome this program is. They offer 0% to 1% interest loans based on what your property value is worth and probably based on what you make again annually too. But it's really easy to get these loans. They can get these IA systems added on to your Title V. They're going to rip up your yard. But I just found out that as part of the cost of ripping up your yard is the cost of fixing up your yard and getting those plants back in place, whatever they had to tear up. Your driveway, maybe you get it repaved again, or not, because you want to have a permeable surface. So maybe you have some shells, some permeable pavers, something like that. But what's been interesting too that I've been learning about on the Waste No Water library tour is that somebody asked us at the first one, how much does it cost for these IA systems? And Ryan, who's the director at Mass TC, said, it's going to run you somewhere around $50,000. And people were like, oh my God. And then he said, well, wait a minute. It costs you $100,000 to get sewering into your house. So you're just not seeing it because there's so much coming in from the state that's offsetting a lot of those costs. But it's $100,000 average from getting the pipes to come into your yard. It's the laying of the pipe, it's the disposal of everything. It's kind of complete system of it all. It's about $100,000. In my town, at our town meeting that's coming up, we're going to be voting for phase 2 of our sewering, which is $91 million. And everybody's at first was like, are you kidding? And then the town manager said, it comes out to $75 a year per person. That's all it is. A cost of a couple of your fancy coffee drinks that you get weekly. And that's the way to speak about it too, is just you have to make this so it's important to you so that you understand the cost. But $75 is going to give you clean waters, your real estate value will be up. You'll be able to go fishing and canoeing and kayaking and do all those things that you want to do that you can't do right now. Just the economy will completely tank here. So lots of people are working on it. Like I said, there's so many environmental groups on the Cape and pond groups, and it's a very, very active community. We actually have our own group, and that was the call earlier, with the Rich Earth Institute in Vermont. They facilitate it so we can be a lot more collaborative.
Wow. So aside from the public infrastructure that they're working towards, there are these things people can do privately, like what you've done.
Yeah,
in
I
your
mean, it's
household.
not, you show a QB to an elderly couple and they'll say, hell with that. I'm going to keep using my flush toilet. Thank you very much. And I won't blame them because that's not for them to use. But there are these appliances or fixtures that they have right now. Well, they're actually German design. They're beautifully designed. They look like toilets. So the pee goes in there. That's all. I went to this place, this called Hermit Thrush Brewery in Brattleboro, Vermont, and use it with their urinals. They have a big tank in the basement of the building. The pee goes from the urinals in the bathrooms where everybody's peeing nonstop because they're drinking, and it goes down into these huge tanks. And then the Rich Earth Institute comes and they actually pump it out. They don't have to deal with it. The same with a homeowner. We went to a residence and saw what they had in their basement. And it's just like a little hole in the side of the house. They unscrew the cap, put the hose on, suction it out of the tank, take it away, and then they pasteurize it. We actually have a pasteurizer at Mass TC too. So they get any kind of viruses out with ultraviolet light. And then the farmers are able to use it on their crops and not have to use mined fertilizers from countries that are fighting wars right now.
Oh, wow. And that's the Rich Earth Institute that does that service.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So, talking about that as fertilizer, isn't it like really high in nitrogen? Or, I mean, it balanced in with the right minerals / chemicals or whatever to make good dirt?
Pasteurized urine, if you look at the Rich Earth Institute, they have, again, more information on this. So I'm just going to be tip of the iceberg here. But it has, when you buy fertilizer from the hardware store and it shows the NPK value on the front. Well, it has a really nice balance of NPK, that nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So it has all that. You can ferment the soil. I mean, you can ferment the urine and actually start adding it. So say if my soil needs a little bit more of something else, we can start thinking about ways that we could tweak the urine to fit different types of soils that need, say, more potassium. They need different minerals that they're not getting. So we've talked about using molasses, all kinds of things you can do to ferment. The woman that was on the call today was talking about biochar in urine. So again, I'm just a sponge soaking it all in, and I don't have all the language for it, so I don't feel comfortable fully talking about it right now. I will play that card like I know a lot of little things about this right now, and I'm just trying to learn. And everything I read about is just very exciting to me. And again, kind of pulling it back to place. I was born and raised here. I did take some time off for about 8 years to travel the world and live in different places, but I've lived in this house for 26 years. We raised 2 children in this house. We're empty nesters. I wanted to bring it full circle and make this place I love and that I came back from all those travels to protect it, to be the place it was when I was a kid in the 70s, and was a huge foundation to who I became as a writer, as a creative, as a daydreamer. All these things I love. It's this place. And so I have a vested interest in protecting this place that I love.
So, Amy, with that top of mind, what's sort of your vision for how you see this all going on Cape Cod? Like, what's the ideal that you're working towards? It's that, does everybody have is it a QB?
I don't think everybody should have a QB, but that's a good transition.
Okay. What's kind of your North Star with this work? Or are you still in the collecting information phase and figuring that out?
I'm actually applying for a grant, and fingers crossed I get it. It's actually really focusing on all of this because as I have found other problems like the textile industry, these problems. And if we could just solve this, if we could find a solution to a problem, we could actually move further. And what does that long-term goal look like? But right now, as the same it is with wool scouring and getting more fiber farmers on the land, keep them on the land, or helping them to find different ways to use their products their wool that they're throwing away by the tons nationwide. That's a whole other story. Here it's like, okay, if we just figured out what we were going to do with the urine in Massachusetts. So I'm applying for a grant that is looking at how to create a regulatory pathway for urine fertilizing in the state of Massachusetts. It will be open source. All the information will be there. Hopefully, I will find that regulatory pathway so that we can then be using it as a fertilizer, and other states can just say, hey, I want to do that too. Here's the playbook. Follow this. It's going to be a little different in Maryland as it's going to be in Maine. But, here's the basic way you do it. It's cleaning up the water here. So it's not going to be just these IA systems. It's going to be sewering. It's going to be those boxes in the ground filled with wood chips, or all these other technologies that are out there that are getting so close to being really, really good and available, as well as the composting toilets, incinerating toilets, urine diverting toilets. There's so much stuff that's out there. So it's a real blend of lots of different types of technologies. And so once everybody's connected in some way to something good, that's not a cesspool or just a straight up Title V, then we're going to start seeing these ponds clearing up. We're going to see those signs less at the ponds that say, like, do not swim, do not let your dog drink this, do not go in this water, which you're seeing all the time now in Cape Cod. Cape Cod's got a problem with that because the ocean's warming, the nitrogen's coming out, the phosphorus, everything's going out into the oceans, and it's this cluster of madness. But anyway, so, long term, I want my Cape Cod back. I want my beautiful place. I used to pretend I was like Huck Finn out of my little raft, paddling around and writing poems and exploring nature. That's what I want. I had talked to you guys too about when the pandemic hit. It was this time, I think, for all of us where we all had to move really fast to make ends meet. And I think we're all starting to realize the pressure that we put on ourselves for years. I've never had so many friends leave jobs. I've never had so many friends switch jobs. I've never had so many friends go walk a trail for a year. Actually go walk, take a walk. They've saved money and they're just there's this real interesting change. And, going back to how I even got here in the first place, when the pandemic hit, I was working 2 part-time jobs. And at the time, my father was really ill and had come on quickly. And in 3 months of my father becoming sick, my father died. And before my father died, he had tried to go fishing with my son, and he couldn't go anywhere else except for the boat landing because he would be out of breath. We didn't know what was going on. So he's standing on the boat, the loading dock, where all these signs are that say you can't fish here. So he had to keep going to different ponds with my son. And he came back, and I had already been doing some, talking to him about what was going on with the ponds. And I was aware of it, but not fully aware of how extensive this was. But my father said, I think there's a problem here. My father had taken my brothers on all these ponds and lakes. I grew up on a pond. And so my father decided to do a little research. So he started reading Rachel Carson and Silent Spring, which I thought was just mind blowing. And so when my dad died and we had to go up to Maine and open the house up, everything was like a time capsule. And on the side of his bed, he was reading Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, and the little bookmark was in there. Grief and sadness, and I can't believe this happened. I just thought I've got to do something to make sense of the grief I feel. And so that's when I started volunteering with this association to preserve Cape Cod. And I co-ran something called Pond Stories. We had people who were coming in, writing stories about places that they loved and played pickup hockey games or went sailing or they did different things. So we started collecting those stories. And then I started becoming more of that world and was able to start growing those plants at Mass TC and doing stuff. But it really started out as this. I was already feeling exhausted. I was feeling like I needed some kind of a change in my life. And I knew something was coming. And when the whole wastewater piece showed itself to me, I felt in my gut, that's where I should go for my father, for myself, for Cape Cod. And so that's why, after working furiously at Botanical Colors to help keep it afloat, Kathy and I, for 3 years, we did a great job. The business is doing awesome. And I felt like I was in a place that I could leave. And she was in good hands too. So now that's why I'm putting all that passion I have into water.
That's amazing and oh so poignant. And that's where shift is going to happen when people start feeling deep in themselves and their heart and their cell that they want to make a change and they want to do what they can to shift. And it's beyond checking the box, being a good citizen. It's beyond all that. It's really motivated in a very deep place. I think it's ambitious to think that everybody would get that way or have that experience or have the same insight that you have about it, about whatever that thing is that we're going to go out there and do. But one person at a time is progress. And I love your story. Having been to Cape Cod, having seen where you live, and having met your dad, and knowing his background as a boy and a man that enjoyed the earth. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Amy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you guys.
Oh my goodness. So we always ask our guests, what does slow living mean to you? If you're able to incorporate that in your life at the moment or not.
Well, again, maybe we go back to the beginning. We're kind of this idea of wherever you go, there you are. That's my idea for slow living is if you think you can't change the world, then you're not going to change the world. If you start with yourself, then you are going to change the world. If you focus on something that you want to start with, just yourself, and getting yourself feeling better, which is what I'm doing. It's just like getting myself to feel better, getting my creativity back, and then directing all that towards place. Then I've done what I've set out to do, and what kind of makes me feel like life's a lot more worth living because I'm taking care of myself, which takes care of my town.
That's so beautiful. And so often we say slow living is about paying attention to how you feel, because there are reasons for you not feeling good or feeling a lack of peace and spaciousness and ease. And lots of times, we can adjust and do things that not only help ourselves feel better in the world, but help the world. So beautiful. It's all wonderful. And such a common denominator in so many of these conversations is about getting in touch with your thing and doing it.
And what does the good dirt mean to you?
Oh my God.
After all
what's
of
the
this,
good-
What good dirt? What does that mean to you?
The good dirt is you guys, and I appreciate
Yeah.
you guys. How about that? Doing all the good work that you're doing. Interviewing everybody, and
Thank
giving
you.
people the opportunity to hang out for 1 hour and just think a little differently. I think that's what we're all trying to do. I mean, to some degree, is just getting people to see something from a different angle. That's what you're doing, and that's what what I'm doing is like, again, not super sexy to talk about sanitation, but I'm going to actually try to make it that, to learn as we go, whether it's good or bad, and to take those experiences, move forward with them, become better people that are in turn, the ripple effects of that on our community, on our families, on our friends' lives. Like, again, so just starting with ourselves and rippling out, which is such a great pun for
Yeah, I was gonna
all
say too,
things
it's
water.
really you're like humor and you're like bent towards comedy. I feel like is really
Well,
helpful in this space
Emma,
because
the pee and poop jokes are prolific in this world.
you keep saying this is a very unsexy thing, but it's actually very funny. It's like the first joke that we all tell when we're humans.
But that's what you lead with. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a book, as part of our library tour, we have like a curated list of books, and we have about 30 plus books on it right now. But one is called Everybody Poops. There's another book the Rich Earth Institute just alerted me on. It's called Everybody Pees. And it should, walk through it. So obviously kid books, but why wouldn't an adult want to start with that?
And if you're trying to get adults to pay attention and talk about it, it's like, why not just make it funny?
Do you see my face right now? So when people like I'm working with, they tell these jokes, they'll say, "You're in good hands," and look at me. And I go, wow, it'll come in like that. Oh, we have to be the change. Yes. I mean, pee the change.
Awesome. I had no idea where this conversation was going to go, but I have to admit, I have been really enraptured by it.
Rich Earth Institute, the QB, they sell them. Start there. So this woman walked me into the bathroom and showed me how you would stand. I wanted her to literally walk me through it. I mean, her pants were up. Because I said, I didn't go to the bathroom for 2 days here and went back to my hotel because I was so afraid of this bathroom. I'm not alone feeling like that. We don't want to feel stupid. We want to be able to.
No, even when
Be
you're like in
smart all
Europe
the
and they
time.
have the whole separate bidet thing, like that's scary. You're like, why is there another toilet in here?
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Well, I have learned so much, and I'm going to carry this forward into, I don't know what, I'll have to check back in and tell you what has come of this conversation. But yeah, I can't wait to tell my husband, guess what we're going to do? No, just
What I did when I came home from Vermont with my QB, and I said to my husband, guess what we're going to do? And he was like, oh no.
yeah. So thank you so much, Amy. This has been, again, a wonderful conversation and hearkening us back to episode number 1 of The Good Dirt. Amy DuFault comes back, and it's been great. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yay. tuning in, calling in, and spreading the good dirt. We love hearing from you. You can reach our listener voicemail at 443-459-1950. That's 443-459-1950. You can find this number in our show notes and in our Instagram profile.
This show is produced by Lady Farmer, a slow living lifestyle community, and the original music is composed and performed by John Kingsley.
For more from Lady Farmer, follow us on Instagram at We Are Lady Farmer. That's We Are Lady Farmer. Or join us online at www.ladyfarmer.com. We'll see you next time on The Good Dirt.
Goodbye.